Hi, good day, and welcome to everyone for this webinar. Is Agile GRC still relevant for SAP? My name is Rogan Morrison. I'm a delivery director here with voquzlabs, and it's my pleasure to welcome you on board today. I hope everybody is well and we can get this webinar kicked off. Just some housekeeping. We do record the session and it is made available afterwards, as well as the slide presentation. So if anybody is looking for information or may have to drop out, please know that you can get a copy of this. We do put it on our web page as well as on our YouTube videos, so have a look out for those. If you've missed some of our webinars that we've run this year, please check them out. We have a whole host that we've been running through the year in terms of our setQ series, and this is pretty much the final one that we're going to be running for this year, and we look forward to some exciting ones coming up in the new year. So I hope everybody's ready to go. I'm excited about this topic because I work in the project management space a lot and deal with a lot of programs and projects implementing not only GRC but also larger SAP implementations. And it's really interesting to have a combination of looking at waterfall, agile, and things like that. And so we're going to take a look at this in the context of what we do and what we can see from our perspective, and maybe this will stir some questions. Also, if you need to get in touch with us, there is some contact details at the end of this presentation. You can reach out to us, and maybe you've got some questions during the presentation session, and please, there is a questions chat. I will get to it at the end and look forward to answering some of your questions around Agile, some context around it, etc. But let's kick off and get into the session itself. So let me just make sure I can get down to the next slide here. For those of you who don't know about voquzlabs, let me take you through a little bit of information about us. It's important that I set the scene around what we do as an organization before we jump into our specific topic today. So voquzlabs is an organization. We are globally based. You'll see that in the next slide, but really we focus and help organizations in maximizing the investment that they've made in SAP in two spaces. First of all, we run the setQ solution, which looks after all the named user licenses, digital access, authorizations, engine measurement licensing, HANA migrations, etc. And we have a numerous set of webinars that covers the same side of things and how we help organizations optimize their their licensing and make the best use of that. And on top of that, we have an advisory capability that helps organizations manage cost reductions, contract migrations, indirect access evaluations, customers who are looking for DA, AP, evaluation, etc. We do a lot of that work on this side, as in terms of the software asset management side of SAP. And we also, in terms of that, we also have our setQ solution, which is very much on the access and authorization side. And this is the focus area that we're going to have today, is looking at agility and agile approaches and methodologies and context in the context of your GRC or your global risk and compliance or access and authorizations, multiple terminologies that can be used towards that. In terms of setQ, it is a solution, a very comprehensive solution. So we cover all the different roles and authorization concepts. We cover web-based user provisioning, the compliance aspect, which is so fundamental to making sure that you don't break audit requirements and internal and external audits, the remediation of that, mitigations, optimization of roles. I've done a number of sessions about role optimization, doing the reduction of roles, the optimization, the expansion of roles when you move to S4HANA. Also making sure that your compliance documentation from an audit perspective is in place. The basics of password management, emergency management, etc. We won't get into all of those. We have a number of demonstrations, and there's a number of short webinars that explain each and every module that we have in our setQ solution. And on top of that, we have advisory capability to help organizations integrate the two solutions. Very importantly, why? Because when you have individuals getting new roles, new assignments of roles, that can also have an upstream impact on your licensing. So that's really important to manage, but at the same time advising how do you manage your roles, how do you manage segregation of duties impacts, the S4HANA role migration, looking at simplification lists, whole lots of different areas that we help organizations to restructure their authorization concept in a much better way. And we have, as we're speaking about today, a way of doing this in an agile fashion, really important, and we'll jump into that shortly. Right, in terms of where do we come from, just a bit about the organization itself. As you can see, we provide a lot of expertise in this license authorizations and compliance space. We specifically focus on the SAP environment, so we are niche providers and experts in this area. This is just a little timeline of the organization's growth over time. Where did setQ come from? Where did setQ? How do we integrate with the organization called VOQUZ? And as you can see, we're based all around the world. I'm based in the African office out of Cape Town, and so great to be in touch with you all from this part of the world. Just a bit of context, we work together with an organization called VOQUZ in the setQ solution, just about a bit about that alliance that we have together with them. Okay, what is Agile? I think this is probably the most important aspect of the discussion that we're focusing on today. And it's really the fundamental principle of what we want to discuss in the context of, is it still relevant? Is where does it fit into GRC, and how does it make sense when you want to go forward in a GRC compliance perspective? So Agile in the context, okay, really one sentence highlights this. Okay, and it's really right at the top there. So keep this in mind when we go through this presentation. Is really the principle is to deliver as early as possible business value. So throughout the elements of execution, in terms of a project, in terms of if you're going to develop a new authorization concept, and I'm going to frame this in the context of governance, risk, and compliance of your SAP solution, you want to deliver business value in that context. Okay, not the broad, we can go into the broader context of SAP and delivering value in terms of functionality. We can talk about delivering value in terms of return on investment of, shortening life cycles of material provision, data flows, etc. But we're specifically focusing today on the agility and its impact on shortening the business value chain in terms of GRC. And this really is what's fundamental in comparison to a traditional waterfall approach. So for those of you who've been doing SAP for numerous years, like I have, we started off with the ASAP methodology, and of course it was a very waterfall approach, not a bad approach, just a different approach. There's no right or wrong. Lots of people go, oh, waterfall is now wrong. No, it's not. It's just a different approach. Agile is a new approach. No, it's not. It has been around for quite a number of years, and there are multiple different methodologies inside of Agile. I'm not going to go through every single one, Kanban and SAFE and Scrum, etc. There's a whole structure of different methodologies inside the Agile context, but we're just doing a bit of comparison here to compare to where did we come from, okay? So a waterfall approach, for those of you who maybe not have been around and have not had so much experience, again, in implementing projects in this nature and GRC in this context, the waterfall approach was a very structured approach. It's typical. You go through phase after phase, and you literally go down the waterfall. Okay, you started in the ASAP methodology with the pre-production and pre-project planning, of course, and then you moved into blueprinting, and then realization, and then final preparation, and then go live. Very structured set of phases, okay? But there's a downside to that, and that's a lot of the frustration comes out of that from business. So they said, hey, we want to get business value faster. We don't want to get these features, and we don't have to wait for them for so long. Okay, if you take a long extended GRC project, it's frustrating because the individuals who are working with the system cannot get the features that they need fast enough in order to deliver that which the business requires. And that's the fundamental. So waterfall has it is very good in certain industries. And if you're doing a high legislative industry, oil and gas, for example, or aerospace and defense, it's very difficult to move away from a waterfall approach, okay, because there's a lot of compliance required in that approach, okay. So I'm saying waterfall is not bad, but if you're in a fast moving industry, you're in e-commerce, you need to get the functional requirements out, you need to get people accessing their system, they need to be able to gain a foothold in the marketplace, then waterfall may not be the right approach, okay. Your requirements, to when you start defining the requirements that you have from a business, to refine these, and once you've refined them, to change direction is very challenging. Why? Because you start off in blueprinting, and that is your defined set of requirements, and it's very difficult to move from those. Having agility allows you to have more flexibility. Okay, so flexibility is a good thing. Okay, it also is challenging because you keep trying to move the goalpost slightly, and it does mean a change in mindset, definitely. So that's one thing to be aware of. The business impact and the testing is high, absolutely. Okay, there is a positive to that. Why? Because your testing is high, you should get higher accuracy. Be aware that if you don't have high testing, you can struggle. Okay, but this is the context of the waterfall approach. It requires a lot of business impact. It requires projects to suck people in to the context of the project. So definitely a challenge in that space. And recovery from failure is difficult and time consuming due to the fact that you are deploying a mass set of changes all at once. Okay, there leaves little room to build new features. Okay, because the project timeline is running in a waterfall approach, it is very difficult. We refer to it as a big bang go live. These things are quite difficult. Okay, you can't easily change the ship. It's normally quite large ships that are going in one direction. To turn them and add extra functions are difficult. So these are some of the common challenges that occur in a waterfall approach. Okay, so in opposite to that, when we look at an agile approach, okay, you're accelerating value delivery as quickly as possible through a process of continuous planning and feedback. We're telling you, hey, this is not working, change this, adjust this, change this, adjust this, etc. There's this continuous improvement cycle that's going on, and you try to add as much value through the process, throughout the process, you're plugging in additional value. Why is this important? Because it allows you to do a few things. When you have a fail, you fail fast and you respond. Okay, there's a consistent feedback loop for improvements. Okay, so one of the important things is, and we'll look at the process of this when we look at the implementation methodologies that we have, some of the context around aligning this to the new Activate methodology, which does have this feedback loop, etc. So fail fast and respond. That is agile. You have to change our mindset to why it's so relevant, because we want to deliver value as quickly and as consistently as possible. Secondly, okay, smaller chunks reduce the risk and the impact. Okay, if you take one department at a time and you implement your GRC over a time like this, chunk, chunk, chunk in one department, the chances of you failing are much lower. Why? Because you've got a smaller department, you've reduced the risk, you've reduced the amount of impact. Okay, you can split the release that you have into smaller batches. So I'm going to suggest some things. Think about these things when you go through the process of looking at a GRC solution. If you want to change and create a new authorization concept, if you want to reduce the roles that you have, take smaller chunks, reduce your risk, and reduce the amount of impact. Okay, delivery of critical features, even within the context of GRC. Okay, if you make them smaller, it's easier to deliver them. Right, thirdly, okay, avoiding temporary workarounds. Okay, what happened often in the current and the standard waterfall approach is that you create a workaround, and then you would say, okay, listen, we have to solve this post the project. Okay, it's very difficult to do that because now people are working in production and they're going full out. Now you've got this temporary workaround. You've got to almost re-engineer it, backtrack, and then start again. So rather fix it up front in an agile way, and that means that you can get a much more responsive, cost-effective solution. Right. Fourthly, Visibility and control and measurement is critical. Okay, so when you're in the agile process, you have to have a very, very high degree of stakeholder involvement and day-to-day visibility to ensure that your priorities are managed correctly in terms of what is going to be delivered in the context of every literally 1 to 2 weeks. In the waterfall approach, it goes into months, 3 months, we're going to deliver this, 4 months, we're going to deliver this. In the context of agility, you're delivering in sprints. Your sprints are much shorter, max 2 to 4 weeks. In 4 weeks is really pushing it. So you want to be able to deliver this portion of functionality as quickly and as effectively as possible. But in order to do that, you need your stakeholders to be on board. Okay, so very important. Again, when you start a project that is more agile based, these are some of the critical requirements around why what you're going to need to make your agile project relevant and more successful. Okay. And then you have fast recovery. Okay. Anybody who's been on crutches? Yes, I've been on crutches. I had a knee operation. I wanted fast recovery. I had to go for rehabilitation. Okay. So you want to get going back into the life as fast as possible. Okay. So if you don't have these massive deployments, okay, the risk of the uncertainty is eliminated. It allows you to free up more time building some new features and creating that business value. Remember what I said in the earlier slide? The whole principle and why Agile is so relevant still is because we want to get that business value delivered as quickly as possible. So take out, get fast recovery, we make an error, we quickly fix it, and we're back on track. Okay. When you have a mass deployments, okay, and I've seen this having been a program manager, when you deploy mass solutions in a waterfall approach, it can be like death by 1,000 cuts, okay, because you have so many IT tickets from so many individuals in your end user community that do not have the correct authorization access. You are just fighting massive amounts of small fires. They're not necessarily large, big fires, but you are fighting 200-300 small little fires, and you don't have a big enough support team to put out all the fires as quickly as possible. Okay, so therefore, an agile approach is most certainly relevant if your organization has got the ability and has got the mindset to take this on. And that's really important. A lot of projects go into it. They've come out of multiple waterfall projects. Their mindset is not aligned to an agile mindset. So you must recognize that up front. And then these are some of the key 5 characteristics of why changing to agile is so important. Okay. Right. So how do you build an SAP access and authorization solution that has the right agile components? Okay, so when you look at an SAP access and authorization solution, you need to go and check and say, has it got elements of agility as part of the functions built into it? Because if it doesn't, it's very hard to implement agile in this context. So that's a fundamental structure to look at. So can you use what components, what functions inside of your access and authorization solution can be used in an agile manner? Okay. And in terms of our setQ solution, I just want to give you some examples. So first of all, let me just explain a little bit about setQ, just so that everybody who hasn't had a view of it gets some context about it. So we cover user provisioning, management of roles and authorizations, SOD compliance and violations, etc., alerts, cloud connections, emergency access, etc. These are all common functions, and there should be features in your access and authorization solution. But when you get to start implementing it, it becomes a whole different matter. And now you have to really drill down and say, what specific functions will I be able to use in an agile mechanism? Okay, so in this context, I've just put up the setQ specific modules, and setQ is a very modular solution. So you can see at the top here, each of these items is a specific module on its own. Underneath here are also modules. These are all different modules, some connectors and some tools. And what I've done to highlight these is to say, which of the specific modules are Agile enabled? Okay, so what differentiates this? So when you look at a GRC solution, an access and authorization solution, you need to look inside the modules and say, how would I use certain of the functionality inside this to actually represent an Agile and make an Agile approach out of this? And I'm going to cover a few of these modules. I'm not going to cover every single module because some of them are not Agile enabled, okay? Running password management is not really Agile enabled, nor emergency management, but we have some specific modules in the setQ suite that are very much enablers towards an Agile approach, and let's run through those. So we're going to take a look at Role Reference Manager. How does this improve the agility that you can use when implementing the solution? Extension Manager, Reduction Manager, Compliance Reference Manager, and Concept Manager. I'm going to have a look at these 5 specific modules and just highlight some key areas of where that helps you with agility, okay? And it may be that you need to look at the solution that you have and say, do we have Agile components in our solution? Can we implement the current solution in an Agile fashion? Or are we stuck because we don't have certain Agile functions? Okay, so just take a look at this, keep a broad perspective in terms of when we will take this, and then I'm going to build on this when we look at the implementation methodology and how this fits into Activate, etc. Because that's where the relevancy comes in, okay? I'm thinking practically now. If I'm the program manager or the program project manager, I want to know how we're going to align the functionality set that we have from an access and authorization perspective. How are we going to align that to an Agile approach that the rest of the project has? Because I don't want to be trying to run a waterfall project in an Agile project. Doesn't make sense. Or I want an Agile in a waterfall. I must have alignment. Okay, so very important that alignment takes place. And if you have modules that align, even better. Role Reference Manager. What is Role Reference Manager? Well, it has 1,000 predefined roles already built. Okay, predefined out of the box building blocks are critical to Agile implementations. If you have no predefined building blocks, it's very difficult. So if you have to design a new authorization concept, if you have to start from scratch without a role reference to begin with, okay, you're going to go through an extensive amount of work, and it's going to be exceptionally time consuming and expensive. This talks about waterfall. If I look at this, I say, whoa, this on its own, if you have to do this manually outside of a system without a set of predefined roles that are already pre-built, that have got no segregation of duties in them, they're conflict free at a single role level, wow, that's going to take a long time. This is not going to be an Agile process. I'm going to have to figure out how I do that. Okay, so that's going to immediately take a lot of time. Okay, using a role reference allows you to move much faster in the principle of delivering value. Why? Because you don't have to build it from scratch. You're taking something that's pre-built, you're plugging and playing it straight into the right context of your GRC solution, and immediately you can get, or very quickly you can get, a new authorization concept. Standardized, granular, and transparent. Quick and easy. This process, again, adding value at the front allows you to extract value quicker at the end. Very important principle. Extension manager, okay? When you think about extending your current set of ERP roles to S4HANA, you think, oh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to know what are the new transaction sets in the simplification list in S4HANA? How am I going to make sure that my users don't continue using the old roles from ERP or ECC? How do I make sure that they use the new roles and the new transaction sets and the new objects from S4HANA? Well, if you have an extension manager, you can do this quickly. The user's authorization problem is done very, very quickly. When I see words like hectic, uncoordinated, unqualified, this means that there is a challenge to deliver business value quickly, okay? So the smart way, the quick way, the agile way of doing this is having an extension manager that notifies you. It has an automated suggestion. It involves a workflow. The person decides on the role and it goes through as quickly as possible. That's creating business value. Business value in what? In terms of time, in terms of money taken, in terms of effort. That's the business value that is measurable. It's tangible. You can do it quickly. Okay. If you don't have this in place, what takes place? Well, it's a much more uncoordinated approach to managing a new set of transactions. Okay, there's no automated suggestion. Okay, this is where you start to struggle with agile principles if you don't have these in place. So the concept we put in a concept reference manager. We look at the new reference of new authorizations, taking out old ones, okay, checking new ones can exist, and automatically turning this reference off once the new user has all the extended authorizations that they need. It's much quicker and easier to do it from a tool-based solution than to try and do this manually. Why? Because you don't have as many tickets coming through, because it's automatically selecting and checking the right concept of authorization for you. Okay, reduction manager. Okay, again, another one where if you try to reduce the number of roles that you have across your organization, roles to users, single roles to composite roles, transactions to single roles, if you try to reduce the complexity of this manually and create business value, very time consuming and extensive, very expensive. It will take you a couple of months to do this per department. Very difficult. Okay, so running a reduction manager, running a tool set that enables you to trace the roles, extract the roles, reevaluate the roles in terms of their reduction potential, and then provides you with a cleansed set of user to role, single role to composite role, and the single roles and the transactions and objects and everything inside them to reduce all of that. Much quicker, effective. This is agility. Okay, this is agility. You get far more better business value out of doing it with tool sets and being able to do it quicker than if you have to go through a manual process. The compliance reference manager. What about your audit queries? We have lots of customers who say to us, but I have existing audit queries, or I need to move to some new existing audit queries. I might have done a disbursement of an organization. I might have had a merger and acquisition. I need some new audit queries. Okay, can I bring audit queries in? If you want to build it from scratch, do I need to again start with having no audit queries? Of course not. We have a whole predefined set of audit queries. Okay, these are already pre-built. It helps you to move quickly to deliver business value in terms of your authorization concepts. Strain, not manageable. These are words that come through when you have a challenge around auditing. Okay, so specifically in the concept of audits, you want to develop a new audit concept. Okay, if you start from zero, you'd have to get somebody in to bring in a whole new set of audit queries. It might be a third party. We've already built these. We can build them in for you. It's much quicker. We've got them. You'll go live. Again, the delivery of business value is quicker, it's simpler, and it's easier. Okay, and lastly, the concept manager, looking at creating the documentation that you need to manage your authorization concept with. Again, when you don't have enough documentation, it is very, very difficult to manage the transparency. It's a high degree of manual effort. We want to move people off manual effort. We want people to move into an agile space of capturing the content on the fly as they need it, okay? And it doesn't get maintained up to date. That means you need to go back and revalidate it, go through to the business departments and get all the right documentation, etc. So it's much easier to set up a template that every time a new authorization request comes through, you capture the right documentation at that point in time, and it manages it. So again, agile functionality built into access and authorization concept is critical. Okay, so we're moving away from these high manual effort elements and creating it as much more agile as possible. And that's the principles inside of the technology. So in order to move with the trend towards agile, we have to have agile functionality, and then we have to have agile methodology. Okay, this is the relevance of putting agile, a concept together for agile implementations. Okay, so I stop here for a second. Okay, and we talk about SAP Activate and the overlap with an agile methodology. So for those of you who've been involved in SAP projects and have had to implement, the standard new SAP Activate methodology is here. And you can see these are the phases at the top. It's an agile methodology. It's modular. Again, this speaks exactly to the principles of how setQ is derived, developed, and implemented. Okay, discover, prepare, explore, realize, deploy, and run. Similar phases to what ASAP was, not too different, new naming conventions, but very importantly is this continuous innovation along the customer life cycle with content. Okay, so there's a content lifecycle management. As I spoke about this earlier, continuous improvement, delivering business value in smaller chunks is what's really important. So how do we structure a setQ implementation in a similar way so that when you are faced with an implementation of SAP, an implementation of S/4HANA, if you're going to go greenfields, okay, re-implement your SAP system, and you have an implementation partner that says, hey, we're going to use this agile methodology, the SAP Activate methodology, then how are we going to go about this? How are we going to impressionate or give a similar structure for your access and authorization implementation? Well, the first thing, when we look at the discovery phase, you do an experience, you trial it. If it's in the cloud, you may trial the cloud solution, etc. You might even try it on premise, etc. So what we want to do is we want to give you an experience, a setQ demo. Okay, try it for a month, try role optimization, role reduction. Make sure that you are ready with the right way to implement this. Okay, very important. There are, and I'm going to talk about this in the next few slides, there are multiple different options for you for implementation purposes. But in order to determine the right one for you as an organization in the context of agile, okay, or not agile, okay, not every company should go agile. Okay, some companies you should stick with the waterfall. It can be a company culture that requires you to go to waterfall. Okay, not everything should go to an agile methodology. Okay, but start with a demo. Start with a demo. It's a month demo, and we have different options available there. Okay, next, align the implementation with the S/4HANA. If that's what you're moving to, I'm using this as an example. Decide, are you going to take over your current authorization concept? That's one method. Are you going to redesign your authorization concept, or are you going to do a complete new authorization concept? Which of these is most suitable in the context of your organization, and how are you going to align this? Okay, very important. Then the next three stages are quite simple. Okay, then you actually do the implementation. Okay, and there are set phases in these three different areas, and these are kind of standard phases. Okay, these you can't get away from. You need to explore, you need to realize, you need to deploy. We have specific phases that are very similar to these. Okay, and all the way through, they are enabled for Agile to do sprints. They are structured in order for us to deliver the value as quickly as possible. Okay, so many customers come and say, oh, implementing a solution in the GRC space, 1 to 2 years. No. We want to get done in 4 to 6 months. We want it to be quick. We want it to be as effective and quick as possible. How do we get there? We also have templates. Okay, as I've spoken about in the functionality, we'll talk about templates in the implementation methodology as well. And then finally, you want to run your solution. So you run it, we have application management support, you're in the run phase. You've implemented an agile access and authorization solution. Okay, so these are the setup structures that we have in place from an implementation that facilitate an agile integration to your ASAP, to your Activate methodology. Right, let's just have a quick look at the different types of implementation methodology. Before I go in, I'll just show you again quickly: complete takeover, redesign of auth concept, and complete new project authorization. I'm just going to highlight a few of the key principles from an agile perspective in each of these different options that are available to customers from an implementation perspective. So we're now going to take over the complete authorization concept. We're not going to change anything. We want to make it quick and easy to reintegrate your authorization concept in your SAP solution. And here you can see we're not going to do any adjustments or any redesign to the current authorization concept. What? Yes, it's possible. We don't have to redesign everything. Okay, so quick and easy. One-to-one takeover. No, we don't need to do, we just need to check the completeness of the data. Okay, we import the existing data. This now is starting to use an agile approach. Okay, many customers think, oh, do I have to restart from scratch? No, you don't. Agile is available. We can import the existing data. We can assign it to the users, to the roles. We can check for consistencies. Okay, make sure we have all the relevant workflows and request management set up, and we can go live with the system release. Okay, put it into production. Okay, so very short, quick, easy sets of phases. Okay, this is for us the most agile method of taking an authorization concept over. Okay, but you as an organization must realize there are upsides and downsides to this. Okay, if you're going to bring all of the old not so good stuff with you as part of your authorization concept, you're going to get this not so good stuff in the new context. Okay, then we have the redesign of the auth concept. So we're going to redesign the authorization concept. We're going to fix it. We're going to tweak it. We're going to amend it. Okay, so we're going to check the existing authorization concept. We're going to evaluate what the weak points are of this existing authorization concept. And based on that, okay, we're going to develop an implementation plan. Okay, so again, we're not going to try and boil the entire ocean. We're going to only evaluate there where you have sets of weaknesses and fix that weakness per module. Okay, again, breaking it, the agile principle comes immediately to the fore here. Do it in small bite-sized chunks. Let's do it per module, FI, SD, etc. Let's break it down, okay? Discuss the changes needed to make with the relevant departments, create the project plan, do the updates of the authorization concept, test it, and go live. Okay, very quick, again, a very quick process. Okay, so again, you have different ways. I'm saying it again, agile can be relevant. Many people think it can't. It can be, but you have to know which methodology you're going to follow. Okay, and as you can see, in terms of the phases, the activities that we have, these are easy to do. Okay, right. The third, this is not as agile as the last two. Okay, we're going to do a complete new authorization concept. Okay, so you're now going to move totally to a new authorization concept. Okay, so yes, there's a preliminary phase. Of course, there is an analysis phase. We need to do an evaluation. Okay, again, what is important for us? We do a transaction collector. We make sure we do the relevant traces so we don't start from scratch. It's not like doing a total greenfields implementation. If you've had SAP before, it's easier. We can evaluate that. Okay, we can import existing data, implement the new authorization concept based on the transaction collector and the reference models. Okay, those reference models I spoke about were the two, the compliance reference model and the role reference model. So again, we're not starting from a clean slate approach. We've already got certain concepts in place that bring agility to the fore. Okay, create these. Okay, there are a lot of templates in this space in terms of this draft that we do here. There's a whole lot of pre-built templates that make this process simpler, faster, and better for each department. And then we have the realization and test. Okay, train the departments. You can go through the train the trainer approach as well if you want to check for consistency and go live. Okay, so 3 different mechanisms from an implementation methodology perspective to take Agile to the fore in terms of a implementation of a access and authorization solution. What I'd like to do is, I think I'm pretty much at the end of the implementation or the set here. How do we execute this? So what is your roadmap? Okay, very importantly, where do you start? So important to know that there is a starting point for this. Okay, and the first is to set up your discovery. So remember way back in the context of this, and I'm just going to scroll back a few slides here, we talked about this discovery phase, very important. So don't forget about that. That's where we start with most organizations. We start with doing this process. Okay, set up for a demo. What is included in the demo? Okay, it's a 1-month demo with a 3-day workshop. Why? Because there's a lot of functionality and there's certain principles within setQ that you need to understand in order for us to give you the best recommendations and advice of how to move forward. So we normally work together with you. You then have to, you plan the system. We've got a demo system. You can play in it, you can trial it, you can understand what things will change, what will stay the same, and how best to make use of the setQ solution going forward, and which methodology from an implementation perspective is most suited to you as an organization. Okay, that is the fundamental outputs of going through the demo process. Do this discovery. Okay, it is far more valuable for you. Alternatively, come and do a role reduction, do a proof of optimization potential. Sit down with us and say, hey, listen, we want to determine how much roles or how many roles we can optimize. Okay, the outcome of this is that you get an anonymized set of data that tells you, in the context of users to roles, we can reduce this amount of percentage. In the context of single roles to composite roles, we can reduce this value of percentage. In the context of single roles, we can reduce this volume of transactions, objects, etc., and that's the volume percentage. Okay, so if you think that your housekeeping is exceptionally accurate, that's fine, and you can just do a very quick. This is a very, when I say quick, yes, it takes time because we have to run a trace. Okay, and that trace normally takes about 4 months. But once we've got that trace data, this reduction process is very quick. 3-4 days and we're done. Okay, then you can decide whether or not you actually want to go through an entire optimization of your roles project. Okay, so different steps: do a demo, reduce optimization potential, and reduce proof of project, do a full project itself. 3 different steps available to you in this context. I want to stop there and ask if there are any questions. I'm going to quickly check the questions chat and see if there are any specific questions. Please, if you do have some questions, if you've got something that is on your mind in terms of the questions element, please pop it in the chat. Let's have a few minutes around Agile. Let's talk about it. Let's get some more input from yourselves and see if there's any specific set of questions. If you found this interesting, please let me know. Put a little thumbs up in the question chat, and I'd like to hear back from you in terms of the context of how you found this this webinar, in terms of its overview, in terms of agility, etc. And I'll leave this open for a few minutes and let you get some answers or questions in there for me. Okay, if there are not many questions, and I don't see some at the moment, okay, good stuff. People have so far said good. Good. Yeah, please, I would recommend, please, if you're interested in this approach, please come and have a chat to us. We've got a lot of customers who are interested in understanding a bit more about the demo. understanding about role optimization, how to move forward, what's the approach to align your access and authorization. Okay, I've got a bit of a question here. Explain about the integration to SAP. Yes, certainly. Let me just go up a few slides quickly. I assume this is in the context of the solution itself. setQ as a solution sits on its own little server from an application perspective, from an architecture perspective, and it uses current RFC connections to integrate to the various different SAP systems that you may have. And from there, we pull the data through to the identity manager, and from there, we manage the authorization concept from both internal SAP systems, cloud systems, non-SAP cloud systems, third-party systems, etc. So if you need specific more information about that, please just drop me an email. My email address and my contact information is at the end of the slide deck. Drop me an information. If you want to see a specific set of demo about the actual solution itself, then please reach out to me. Very happy to give you a detailed setQ demonstration and help you with this. But yeah, good. Okay, if there are no other questions, I'm going to close out today's session. Thank you for your attendance. I trust you'll have a super rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you in the last of our sessions this year in November before we kick off in the new year with some exciting things. Look out for our next sessions, especially next year. We're going to be doing a session on RISE, so look out for that. There's a quick question here. Once the setQ is set up, then we are only dependent of authorizations in setQ. Correct. setQ is an authorization solution, and you manage all your authorization and compliance in the setQ solution. It's very easy. I suggest we have a specific session about this. I can take you through the architecture of it, the details of how the system is set up, the context of projects, what we call setQ projects, where you can do testing, multiple different projects from dev projects, QA projects, production, etc. Testing new authorization simulations that may come down the line with regards to new sets of functionality, etc. So certainly I can help you with that and show you the functionality that sits behind this to make it easier. No, you don't need to work on authorizations in the SAP backend system. setQ has all of that in its solution, and you can work on both the web front end, which is very, very easy, fantastic and easy to use. It's already got pre-built in compliance checks, etc. And most people work off the front end, and it's only really the person once you set it up that will work off the back end. So it has a web front end, very, very user friendly, very easy to use. I certainly suggest we do a demonstration for you there and give you an overview of what the solution looks like. Okay, good. All right, thank you everyone. Thank you for attending today's session, and I wish you a very successful rest of the day.